Hello, I'm Vivian, and this is my husband Nick, and I'll be going over some concepts and topics we've learned about in EDCI 6710 from the past month. I'm really excited because this class is a lot of stuff I've been familiar with already. And one of the first things we talk about is mindset, which is a term coined by a psychologist named Carol Dweck. And she just focused on the different types of mindset there are. And we're kind of just mainly focusing on students and how we can relate it to them. Basically, the two types of mindsets are a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And just looking at those two differences, like a fixed mindset, a student would have like a way of thinking that is really stuck. Like they think they're either good at something or not. Like most of the time we think of math with this, like when it comes to math, you hear the phrases like, oh, I'm just not good at it, I'm not a math person, and stuff like that. And it's kind of showing that they have a fixed mindset. They think that math skills are something that they're born with or they have a cap of in their life, and that is it, and they will not kind of put an effort to kind of change that. So that's kind of a fixed mindset, and we might know people that we grew up with that we've seen this in class. But the other type is a growth mindset where you kind of see mistakes or challenges as opportunities for you to learn and grow. So we obviously want to try to promote the growth mindset more because you're not really so self-critical, you're not focused on your own mistakes, but you're determined to kind of see those little steps and paths to help you grow. So and it's kind of funny because it's kind of like one of the first things we try to teach at school, like, hey, our brain is a muscle, and that the more we work it out, the more we can kind of fix and or strengthen it and help it grow and such. That's kind of something, the first thing that we kind of focus on, the different types of mindsets. So our role as a teacher, though, we want to try to promote the growth mindset instead of a fixed one, and that's just about helping students feel like successful and stuff. And the terrible thing is, like, once a student is kind of stuck in that fixed mindset, they'll kind of grow to be helpless, and that's a term we learn called learned helplessness, where they get so stuck in that way of thinking that they're not good or that they just won't even try because they don't want to put in the effort and be deemed like a failure or something. Do you have a time you were stuck on something, or you had to challenge yourself with a different mindset, or growing up?
I think a lot of times I go through a cycle of I'll never be able to understand this, or there have been times I look back where I understand I'm going through a process or learning a new subject, and it's so foreign to me and it seems so hard that at some point I probably tell myself, there's no way I can do this. This is way above me. I'm lost. And then maybe sleep on it or do something else, come back and take a step back and say, I've done this before. I've relearned something in the past. And then at some point you get so far along that you look back and you realize that you are capable. It's not as hard as it seems, but it's really hard to start something new and be interacting with something foreign, I think, is the hardest part. For me personally, I don't know about other people.
Yeah. And I like how you brought that example of like different strategies you try, like when you're stuck or challenged, because that kind of was like a perfect example of you coming with your growth mindset. Because like with students, a lot of times when they see a problem they get to and they're stuck, they won't sleep on it and come back. They'll just kind of, pout, complain, give up. And that's, a lot of what I see every day. And, so I don't know if I think from your successes, maybe of your growing up and stuff, it's the teachers there that help you and adults that kind of cultivate that, so that now that you're an adult, you know that there's a way that it's possible, and you just have to try something new and come back to it. So it's kind of cool now coming. Yeah.
If I can interject, you find that students, in a fourth grade classroom, so they've been not necessarily mature yet, but do you find that they will come in already with a fixed mindset? You can tell some kids are like, they'll look at a problem, not even try, versus some kids that'll look at a problem and really like go through the efforts before they ask a question.
It seems to be like, not to be so general or blanket term, that now most of the time, like, so many factors go into it, but a lot of the times we're seeing now that students are
coming in with that fixed mindset or just kind of looking for an easy way out. And that kind of leads into my next topic of motivation. How you mentioned, like, you know, that you're certain that there's a way and you want to come back to try again. It's kind of like my job to remind that of kids, I guess, that there is a way, but I don't necessarily want to just give them the answer or kind of even like bribe them to get there themselves. Like, there's just different types of motivation now that we get into to promote the different mindsets. So the two types are intrinsic and extrinsic, which you can kind of tell by what it sounds like. Intrinsic is more internal motivation, and you want to just learn it on your own, try it on your own kind of thing, not really for an outside reward, which is what extrinsic motivation would be. So we want to try to develop an intrinsic motivated kind of form for learning, just so students are kind of learning purely out of curiosity and joy, because they kind of want to try new things for the sake of it and just to see if they can learn something new. But obviously this is not the case with every child. They are not coming to school every day hoping to learn something new. We're all pretty much there because we have to, and it's kind of the teacher's job to kind of find ways to implement success so that they can grow intrinsically motivated and not just do something because they're told to or have to. So then going into the next type of motivation, extrinsic, and that's more when people are working towards a desired outcome. Like, students might be told that if they finish math problem or if they finish their work or something, that they get a little reward, like a piece of candy or something, or some kind of extra recess time, whatever it may be, so that they get through that challenge. But later they might be dependent on some kind of like reward or motivation to kind of get them to do that. So it's something externally motivating them to do it. So
but you hope it's Pavlovian.
yeah
So that they don't get to the point that they expect a reward, but they just magically hear assignment and say, I really want to get 100% on this without a piece of candy coming afterwards.
And at the same time too, like, getting that 100 is also another type of like extrinsic reward, because are they hoping to get that good grade so that they earn that grade? Like, what is their motivation to get that grade? Is it so they can go to college and get straight A's, or just what their parents have told them to always do? Or is it to do it just so they don't get in trouble, like escape a consequence? Because in that case, it's, as odd as it sounds, it still is an extrinsic motivation. You're not internally wanting to get that good grade yourself. You're scared of being punished or a consequence if you don't.
So by backing up on what you said, getting grades is an extrinsic motivation. I never knew that. That's actually really smart.
Yeah,
because it's a benchmark, but it's a way for you to show like you have accomplished.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tough middle ground with how much emphasis do we put on tests, how much do we care about it, with all of this in mind. So I guess just kind of focusing on motivation. Like, we want them to get the learning, do the challenging stuff, but we want to make it fun in a way where they're seeing the point in it, they can relate this to their life, but they're not solely dependent on like a reward for them, so that when it's removed, they're not just totally giving up or not into what we're learning. So it really is like a delicate balance of buying their attention in, but not too much where that's all they're dependent on and they're not going to listen without it. So it's kind of, it's weird.
You just tell this whole thing to a 10-year-old and they're like, yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know about that.
You actually have to go around it and do this. You have to do all of this in a hidden fashion.
Yeah,
from the
it's not just
perspective.
the teacher knowing what they have to teach, but just building in the ways that will best have the student want to learn it themselves. It's just
to like hide it.
Yeah, and then that also comes into my next topic of like student engagement, because it really is how a student is engaged with their learning, with how much they're motivated in learning or whatever their interest is on that topic. So with student engagement, the amount of, it pretty much is defined as like the amount of the degree of attention that they want to put into whatever it is that they're learning or being taught. And student engagement itself pretty much later extends to their mindset, how they are motivated, and it all just kind of ties in. Like each daily lesson, how I make a child feel about a particular topic shapes how they feel about school itself, and that shapes how they become a learner lifelong. So when you think of student engagement, what do you kind of think of. I don't know. Have you heard of that term? Or it's kind of like it's a buzzword.
I think,
my
yeah, I
field.
think that is kind of defined by itself, right? How much
Yeah.
students are engaged in it. But as a unit of measurement, I've never thought of it like that in terms of adding it into like a
Yeah.
growth mindset, a fixed mindset of
It's-
like how to motivate kids and seeing their engagement. So do you guys benchmark that by
Surprisingly,
observational?
yeah. Like it's one of the first things you learn when you start teaching. Like your principal might come in and just pop in and observe your lesson, and they can just gauge from looking at your class. You know, you can tell who's looking by eye contact, what they're doing at their desk, if they really are listening or not. Just little things. You can come up with percentages like, oh, this percent of the class, you know, definitely following along and stuff, because it's pretty noticeable once you're in there. You can feel it. Like, are students just talking? Are they looking at the teacher, whatever the content is about? So it's interesting because, yeah, you actually can quantify engagement and stuff. So it kind of puts pressure when, you know, any moment you don't know, like, are students actually paying attention to what I'm doing? Am I making this fun enough, like challenging enough, giving them enough support so that it's not too easy for the ones that find it that way? Like, it's just a constant juggle of making sure that everyone's needs are met in the right way. So yeah, it's tricky. It's like it's fun because you want to make your lessons fun. You feel like when you're bored teaching, you don't like that subject, you're just going on and on. They feel the same way too. So yeah, so it's kind of neat. But at the same time, on one spectrum, a lot of people might think like, oh, student engagement, that just means showing a video or having them work on a poster together. Whereas, you know, the rigor of their learning, what we need to get them to learn, a video itself might not just cover it. Like, yeah, they're engaged, but are they learning what they need to at the same time? So it's also a delicate balance between how engaged, how focused and interested you want them to be, and also like bringing them up to where they need to be too for
So
learning.
things like asking questions, writing
Yeah,
notes.
exactly.
Hey,
Keeping
I'm
them-
just looking forward.
Yeah, it's not so because at the same time we don't want to just information dump. We've found obviously, you know, that's not the best way to learn. Like, you don't want to just sit there for a lecture and get this information, especially at, you know, the age of primary elementary school. Like, their brains are just not wired to act like that. So it's kind of interesting how like teachers, as our role and job, there's just so much that goes into it, just because we're trying to facilitate all of this happening. But yeah, this kind of brings me into my next topic, just to kind of make sure that students are engaged. It's like the teacher's primary job. So the role of the teacher itself is to facilitate this learning, you know, not just everyone quiet, let's watch this video in color, you know, which is sadly often, like, in certain schools or, you know, certain districts that might happen, or that might work with certain children and certain that come from certain backgrounds or socioeconomic influences.
There's students that you see that they actively aren't engaged, so at some point you just kind of give them something to be entertained
To at
by
least
while you
hold
engage.
up the management, yeah, and I don't know,
So they may not distract other students, perhaps.
yeah, so
So other ways to do that, to engage them as opposed to just
shoving them
shoving them
aside and
aside.
excusing them to not learn or something.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's just so many topics to like touch on with this, but yeah, essentially like the important role that teachers have, keeping the show going, I guess, in terms of everyone learning, because you want to create those lessons that engage everyone and bring the meaning of what we have to learn and teach them, so that they can take it in and find a reason to.
bring meaning.
Yeah, bring meaning to it.
Amazing.
But at the same time, it's, you know, your meaning isn't going to be the same as my meaning, so it's tough, but you're really setting up those experiences, having discussions, like almost like forcing them to communicate and discuss, so that it's almost awkward or uncomfortable if they choose not to participate. Because otherwise, like, we've been looking at videos and different documents and just ways that how we create a lesson and stuff can really just impact how students choose to participate in the learning. So
And
just,
it might be like how comfortable they are with that type of a lesson then, I guess. 'Cause
Yeah.
if they're not used to collaborating or talking, and maybe they're from an area, like household that doesn't talk and collaborate, then it is completely foreign to them.
it is. And when a teacher just says, okay, you guys talk, go ahead, and then, you know, everyone's just sitting there or they're not actually talking,